What's going on, folks? It's your main man, Rick the Dawn. Thank you for clicking on this video. And as you know, like we do every single episode, we're going to have some conversations about the latest events in the Big Brother house. Before I do that, I have to send a very big thank you to all the amazing people that continue to support my videos. Also, those people who like and subscribe to my videos. Also, to my surprise, the amazing people who went to vidmondo.com and started uploading content, and also those individuals who went to wordy.com and joined my new website. So I want to just say I love you guys. I appreciate you. And let's talk some BB. So this episode had a lot of different twists and turns. And to be honest with you, it was a lot to capture. I had to write down notes because otherwise this episode would be all over the place. And I hate those kind of videos where you like get to the point. So I had to write down some things to ensure that I really hit the points I want to hit. So first off, I want to talk about Taylor's pick of Alyssa and Indy as bestie besties. In my opinion, it is a very, very smart move. And I'm not sure if other people see the game as I do. I do notice I had some comments come through saying that they kind of had different viewpoints. But I want to point out that these are just my viewpoints. I'm not saying that they are the official. This is the official recap. This is the only way that you can see the game. There's a lot of different ways to see the game. So I just want to make sure I clarify that I don't think I'm all knowing when it comes to this game. I am just like you. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on before it happens so I can be ahead of the curve. But I will say that right now for me, Taylor's move to elect Alyssa and Indy as bestie besties was a very aggressive move. And I would also argue it was a smart move. Now, there was some comments that I've read that people wonder why Taylor did not go with Daniel as her bestie, which would have also aligned her with Kyle. And I understood the rationale, but I thought that the person making that comment didn't take in consideration a few things. By becoming besties with Kyle and Daniel, she would only eliminate one vote, and that being Daniel's vote. However, becoming besties with Indy and Alyssa, that eliminates two votes against her. So I thought that Taylor made the smarter move. And like that person I'm speaking about, I kind of felt the same way when I saw Taylor's vote. But no, Taylor made the right move by electing to go with Indy and Alyssa, because instead of just one vote being Daniel's vote, she takes away two votes against her. Smart move, in my opinion. Now, I was really surprised in this episode to see just how much Indy dislikes Taylor. And I need someone to tell me in the comment section, can you explain to me why Indy dislikes Taylor so much? I'll be honest with you, I have no idea. When I look at the game and I go back and I watch different episodes, I watch different moments, there's at no point where I see Taylor say or do anything that Indy might be upset about. And it makes me wonder, what's the real issue here? And if anybody knows, maybe it's something on the live feeds that I'm missing. Can you help me out, please? Because I'm really, really not understanding. Now, Daniel scolding Alyssa was surprising. Daniel thinks Alyssa and Nicole. Oh, okay. So there's a part in the episode where Daniel goes in on Alyssa, and this was very surprising for me. He apparently very upset about the fact that Nicole was voted out 9-1, which is very surprising to Daniel, obviously. He goes up to Alyssa and he basically scolds her. I felt like it was a father or a grandfather talking to his daughter or granddaughter. That is what the vibes that I receive is. He's going to Alyssa saying, "Hey, you didn't think that you could just throw her a vote? I mean, it means that I don't really have you." He said things like that, and it was very cringe for me. He says things like, I thought that you all were cool, and if you don't support Nicole, then I don't have you. He said things to that effect, and I was like, wow, okay, what is this? This is something different, and I didn't expect it. I just didn't expect Daniel to be so emotional. I think that was a word that they used quite a few times throughout the episode. Daniel was very emotional about the eviction of Nicole, and as much as I've tried to dislike Daniel, like I said, I understand that he's a human being, and no one is flawless. No one is perfect. And even though I don't prefer his character, I don't prefer the kind of person he is, I certainly can understand the emotions that he has that are tied to the game. Let's be frank. If we're in the game and our best friend leaves, you don't think you're going to be a little upset. Now, what was surprising to me was the fact that he's a super fan and he reacted this way, because any super fan of the game would have maybe held his or her reservations about how they really felt in order to go further in the game. But that wasn't the case with Daniel. And I've said this before. Daniel's a straight shooter. He's a player who has no problem letting you know exactly how he feels. And I'm not sure that's a good strategy, but I'm pretty sure Daniel would tell me at this moment he doesn't really care. Daniel tries to reverse sabotage. Now, there was a point in the game that Daniel starts to give this very, very weird acknowledgement of Monty and Michael's game. He's kind of like, "Hey, I really, really admire you guys' game. If Monty or Michael go to the end, I'm going to select them to win." He says things like that. and it's not in private, which is where you would expect that compliment to come from. He says it in front of everybody, which tells me he's doing a reverse sabotage. Instead of, saying in private, hey guys, I really, I'm not upset. It was a good game move. He's saying in front of the entire house, and preferably, particularly about Monty's game. He says some things about Michael, but you really feel most of his energy and attention go to Monty because Monty was the HOH. He says things like, I really think you guys are going to win the game. If you get to the end, I'll be honest with you, everyone. I'm going to select Monty. And of course, he wants this to come across as a compliment, but this is reverse sabotage. This is a compliment that is meant to make people think, wait a minute, is he right? Am I playing the wrong game and allowing Monty to continue to go throughout this game? And for a minute, I'm thinking to myself, it doesn't work. But as you watch the rest of the episode, you start to realize that it did work because not only does Daniel begin to have some conversations with the HOH, Michael in some ways starts to think about targeting Monty. And we'll talk about more of that later. But the point is, Daniel's seeds, he drops some seeds and they start to, grow some legs towards the end of the episode. So this was definitely reverse sabotage. And a lot of times throughout this episode, Daniel implodes. He has a absolute breakdown. He's just going through his emotions. He's going through his feelings, and you just can't help but, it's like watching something you shouldn't see. It's like, I don't really want to watch this. This is so bad. He's playing a game that I would say is full of emotion. I thought that Kyle was the most emotional player in the game, being that he had this really tight-knit situation with Alyssa, but no, I was wrong. Daniel is certainly playing the most emotional game, and who can blame the guy? I mean, he's going through a situation where he just lost his bestie, his real best friend in the game, and he doesn't know how it happened. I got this sense many times through watching this episode, like, hey, this is what it feels like to be the people you're targeting or the people you were targeting. When he was going for Taylor, he didn't care what happened to Taylor. If she went this way or went that way, she could have went out the house or got voted out the house on top of her head for all he cared. He didn't really care. So I really found it ironic that he expected so much sympathy and explanation about the moves that the house was making. And a lot of times he blamed Monty for those moves, when in actuality, it was a lot of people in the game. Now, I will say I was very surprised by Monty's response to Daniel's criticism because I expected Monty to be a little more fiery. But in my opinion, maybe he chose the right way to handle it. I think he was a lot more reserved because he understood that he really had the numbers on his side. But for me, it was really surprising to see that Monty didn't lash out just a little bit more because, in my opinion, Daniel was just throwing haymakers. Daniel was out for blood, and Monty seemed to play a little more reserved than I would have. And I say that because towards the end of the episode, you see Daniel and Michael work together just a little bit, and that tells me, hey, Monty should have fought a little bit better. And I'll say this: he had an amazing story, Monty. He could have said, listen, I'm not the one who sent your friend home. I elected to keep Alyssa and Indy on the block, and it was your acknowledgement. It was your move to take Nicole down. That's all Monty had to say. He didn't even have to bring up Indy and Alyssa because maybe that's why he doesn't say it, because he understands by saying that Indy and Alyssa will probably feel some kind of way. Like, wait a minute, so you wanted to keep us on the block? I mean, them still being in the game, that would matter to them. So perhaps all he had to say was, look, it was your decision, you and Kyle's decision to take Indy and Alyssa down. So how is this now my fault? In order for me to be mind controlling all these people in the house, that would also mean I would have to be mind controlling you, because I didn't tell you to take. In fact, I told you to keep the nominations the same, and you did the opposite. So how am I mind controlling everybody? How is this my fault? And I think he missed that golden opportunity to say that to Daniel, because Daniel really needed to hear that. What else do I have? My thumbnail says it all. There was a moment where I was just in the background screaming, fight, 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 fight. I felt like those kids at the lunchroom table that sees two people arguing. I'm like, just, do it, go. But like I said, Monty kind of played the cooler role and it didn't go that far. But certainly, I have to give Daniel just a tad bit props, because Daniel is fearless. Daniel has a game where he's like, he just doesn't care about his game. And it's surprising. I'm always surprised because Daniel is a super fan. But when I watch him play, he plays the most reckless game. I mean, he's the one who put all his eggs in the Nicole basket. He's the one who won HOH and didn't do the most with it. He's the one who asked for Nicole to go up in place of Indy and Alyssa. These are his moves. So the fact that he's so upset, it's always baffling to me. He just plays a really different game. It's really crazy for me. Yeah, so I asked that question in my notes, like, what is Daniel mad at? He's the one who made that decision. Now we go to the HOH competition, and like I've already stated before, it was no surprise for me because I actually stumbled upon the information about who actually won the HOH, and I really hate that that happened. But sometimes in this internet age, you just type in one thing, and all you know, you got all kinds of information that you didn't ask for. But what happens to kind of break down a little bit what happened in the HOH competition? It was a obstacle course of some sorts where you had maybe three different ways you could get to the timer and tap it before the time runs out. And Daniel does an amazing job by getting done in about 16 seconds, a little over 16 seconds. And honestly, if it were not for the HOH winner, Daniel would have actually won the competition. But you know that guy. If you watch my videos, you hear me kind of predict a lot of these different things in my preview. The same thing I'll be doing today, a little preview after this video. I said that Michael would most likely win the HOH competition. So those individuals that's watching my videos, they have to be thinking like, wow, Rick really hit the nail on the top of the head with this one. That's exactly what I said. I said Michael was going to win it. And guess what? Michael wins by clocking a time of 11 seconds, no, 11.79 seconds, which is insane. He took the hardest way. And we know that it's difficult because we saw Taylor, we saw Joseph, people of that, that caliber fall down and not be able to make it. So that just showed you how skilled Michael is. And in fact, as he was running the obstacle course, I actually noted some things to myself. I said, this guy literally looks like a gazelle. And that was the closest animal or the closest being or organism that I could figure out when I watched him run through the course. Now, he did have some stumbling moments, but he just keeps his balance. And he has that very slender build. So it wasn't really a moment where I was really worried about him because he doesn't weigh too much. It's like he can catch his balance really easily. So Michael wins the HOH with a time of 11.79 seconds. And goodbye to everybody else. I mean, I think Turner maybe was the person that was closest to clocking in a little faster. But again, I think even he failed. So it just shows how much of a problem Michael is. And it's funny because you see Michael win all these competitions. And even if I'm in the leftovers, I'm starting to wonder, hey, at what point do I take the shot at this guy? There's a point in the game where, and I'll talk about it a little bit more in detail later, but there's a point in the game where people start to look at Monty and they start to line up their shot. And I'm wondering to myself, hey, the same people that are scheming with Michael to look at Monty, i.e. Brittany, I'm like, hey, you might want to look at Michael. And obviously Brittany wouldn't make that decision because she has a final three between Michael and Taylor. But I would really like to just phone in or just beep in just for a second and say, hey, Brittany, there's no way you're going to win against Michael. No way. 0%, 0.000 chance. In fact, I would argue you would have a hard time winning against Taylor. So I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Now, there was a moment in that HOH competition where Jasmine goes up, and I was very confused about that because I realized that she was still injured. And to no one's surprise, Jasmine, for the most part, just stands still, and she just lets the time run out. And I'm just thinking to myself, because I've heard her describe things so much, I'm like, I wonder if she's gonna just kind of pop up on the screen and say, Julie, that was harder than the football hammer at a cookout. I was just waiting for something like that to come out of her mouth. It never happened, by the way, but it did happen in my brain. And she loses by way of just being timed out. So that was interesting. Kyle says, I don't know who I'm going to side with. Now, I want to talk about this real quick. Michael says something that was Kyle says something that was very interesting. As you know, Kyle's in the Leftovers Alliance. And he says something that's very interesting. I'm not sure exactly where he says it or in what context. I just noted the fact that it was very surprising. At some point in this episode, Kyle says, if I'm in power, and I'm paraphrasing, if I'm in power because I have Alyssa, I'm not sure which side I will side with. That being between Alyssa and the Leftovers. That was extremely surprising for me. I thought that Kyle, and you know what? I shouldn't criticize Kyle for this move because every showmance in BB history kind of follows these lines. But I will say I was still surprised because I was just hoping for my own selfish reasons that Kyle would keep the Leftovers Alliance above his relationship with Alyssa, but it's just no chance. I mean, we're going to look back in 5 years from now and Kyle and Alyssa will be married with children. So it's really ridiculous for me to think that he would put the Leftovers Alliance above Alyssa, but he says these things. He says it's going to be very difficult for me to choose between Alyssa and the Leftovers. And, I'm going to go ahead and just spill the beans. It's no way at this point in the game that Alyssa is going to go under or beside the Leftovers. If it comes down to Leftovers versus Alyssa, Kyle is 101% sure. I'm 100% sure that Kyle is going to select Alyssa. It's no way that Alyssa goes second to the leftovers at this point. Before, I would have said maybe, possibly. At this point, 0% chance. Okay, so Alyssa now has preference over the leftovers. If you don't know that, now you know. Turner wipes out now. Okay, going back to the HOH competition, it's Turner's time to go, and it's the most hilarious because he's trying to go so fast. His words, and I'm paraphrasing, Michael has already locked up the game. And I just want to make sure I send a little message to Michael that he will not get this so easily. So Turner goes the same route that Michael goes, and he's trying to speed up. You know, Turner has those tiny legs, so he's trying to speed up and trying to do the exact same thing that long-legged Michael, delicate gazelle Michael does, and he has the most epic wipeout. If you don't do anything, go watch the wipeout because it was serious. I mean, the man, it was bad. Okay, I thought that they would stop the game, but in Big Brother fashion, maybe it's editing. But in Big Brother fashion, they just keep on rolling, But the guy has the most epic wipeout, and I was like, wow, I hope his neck is okay because he just like face planted, and he even not acknowledges that. But I want to also ask everybody in the comments. I got Brenda. How you doing? What's up? What's up? But I want to ask everybody in the comments, everybody watching the video, at this point, who would you pick as the top 3 strategic players in the game? I'm going to give you my 3 picks, and I believe that there might be a smidge of bias, but I'm gonna be honest with you. It's not a lot of people to pick from. Okay, so if you could in the comment section, who are the top 3 strategic threats in the game? Who do you have? I'm going to give you my 3 picks, and I'm going to tell you why I say that. Number 1, I have Taylor. The reason I say Taylor because I thought it was a really smart move, a very strategic move to align herself with Indy and Alyssa, which would cancel 2 votes against her should it matter. All right, if she would have aligned with Daniel and Kyle, Alyssa and Indy would have easily voted for Taylor to go out the game. So that's 2 votes she canceled by aligning herself with them. I'm gonna be honest with you. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I do believe Taylor is in the top 3 in terms of strategy. I mean, and how could you argue against me? We're talking about somebody who was targeted since day one, and here she is in the prime position in the game. And also, like I said, 3 coming up soon? It'll be 4 of the 6 people targeting her are out of the game, and they all went sequentially. So that tells you she has some kind of strategy. The next player I would say is I'll say Monte. Here's why I say Monte. Monte did something that was very, very strategic. In the last episode, when he's having his go arounds and talking to everybody about who to put up, he allows Nicole to bury herself. Nicole comes into the room and she says some things that were very incriminating towards Indy and Alyssa. And instead of just keeping that information to himself, he does something that's very strategic. He goes back and tells Indy and Alyssa that's what Nicole said, and as a result, they actually vote against Nicole, which was unprobable, unseen at that particular point. And he also uses reverse psychology on Daniel, which is very difficult to do because I'm not going to say Daniel's a bad. Like he's just, he appears to me to be intelligent. I mean, come on. So to use reverse psychology to psych out a player of that caliber, a super fan of all things, come on, you got to give Monty a little bit of credit. And the third player I wanted to make note of was Turner for creating the Leftovers Alliance, for picking the right moment to stand up for Taylor. These are things that I think he deserves a little bit of credit for. So I am interested to know for the people that's watching, just hop into that chat real quick and let me know what you think. Who are the top 3 strategic players that you have in the game right now? Michael leaves Daniel in the game to do his. Oh wait, so there's a point in this episode where Daniel and Michael have a meetup, and this is after Michael has won the HOH. And I have to tell you, I can't get mad at Daniel. Daniel makes a very smart move. He offers himself as a mercenary. A mercenary is someone who goes out there and does the dirty work for whoever hires them. It's like a hired contract, And Michael sees the worth in Daniel. I mean, I thought this would be the case, but she doesn't do it, because she has pride. I'm not sure. But the point is, Daniel understands now, especially being the Nicole is out the game. So Daniel offers himself and says, look, I know you can't go at certain people. You're in a certain position in the game. I'll do your dirty work. I'll go after the Montes. I'll go after the Kyles. I'll do that for you. And it's funny because this is a complete role reversal. If you don't remember, maybe the first or second week, Michael comes in to talk to Daniel, who's the HOH. And Michael is offering himself on a platter saying, look, I would like to work with you as duo super fans of the game. Let's work together. And Daniel shuts down Michael's offer because who knows what the reason was. Daniel had some kind of issue with two super players being in the game. And you can just tell that Daniel didn't really like Michael from the get-go. But Michael does do that. And in this case, it's the reversal. Daniel's coming back. He's hobbling back, in fact. And he's actually offering himself as a mercenary to take down Michael's targets, which allows him, Michael, to stay in the dark about what's going on. I mean, in the dark and not getting any blood on his hands. So I have to say, Daniel made a smart move here. And surprisingly, it works because you see a lot of times, or you at least you hear in the diary room confessions that Michael is looking at Monty as a huge threat. And I think all of America is looking at Michael as the huge threat. But in the game, within the context of the game, they're not really looking at that right now because, of course, Michael's the HOH. So I would argue that Monty, at least to the house, is the second biggest threat. And he's there for the taking, especially given that no one really knows about the Leftovers Alliance. Now, I would say Michael is too honest. I mean, Michael's game is so interesting to me. And I think this is why he is the biggest threat in the game. He's so honest. If he gets to the end, which I'll be extremely surprised if he does, no one will be able to say, Michael misled me. Michael lied to me. Even when they voted out Ameerah, they went straight to Michael and said, did you actually place a vote on Ameerah? And what did Michael say? He was the only person who said, I did that. And what did they say? They said, well, you know what? Michael, we really appreciate you being honest about that. And then there's a point when he's talking to Daniel where he openly admits that he's gunning for Monty. So I was thinking to myself, is that something you would want to share with the enemy? Couldn't that come back to haunt you and be used against you? But I don't know that Michael cares. And also the fact that he's winning so many HOHs is showing me that he's honest about his physical gifts. Michael is playing a very honest game. And if he can continue to win and keep himself in good graces by hiring people like Daniel, I think he has a great shot here. We'll see as the weeks go on. Brittany and Michael scheme against Monty. Yeah. So Brittany, I gotta take pause when it comes to Brittany because I'm always confused about her gameplay. I like to say that she's making the right moves. Using Michael as a shield is super intelligent. That's all I got for her. I just think that the move came too early. I have to say that. It's saying that my connection is unstable. I do apologize. This is live. But I have to say that I'm really surprised about Brittany and Michael skimming on Monty. I felt like it was a little too soon. It was too early. I just think you got too much game left to actually take this shot this soon. But what do I know? I'm actually a viewer. I'm not in the game. I don't feel the pressure of the game itself. But, watching Brittany and Michael have this conversation was completely just baffling to me. I just said, wow, wait, guys, wait. You haven't even got Daniel out the game. I see this conversation taking place once Daniel is out. But Daniel still being in the game and you're already having this conversation, it certainly didn't rub me the right way. And this is why I say right now, I'm going to go ahead and just call it. I believe that the Leftovers Alliance will not last the next 3 weeks. I believe Monty will probably leave. Michael may have a potential chance to leave the game. But somebody's going to get voted out, and they're going to probably go into maybe the final 5. I believe 2 members will leave the Leftovers Alliance. All right. Then we get to the HOH picks, and Michael decides to nominate Monty, Terrence, and Joseph. And I want to know from people that's watching if you can even hear what I'm saying. Who knows? This thing is all unstable at this point. But if you can hear what I'm saying, I'm actually very curious to know, what do you think about Michael's nominations? Did you think he was smart? Now, my wife did remind me that prior to the nominations, Monty came into the room with Michael and offered himself up, which I thought was a bad move, but what do I know? But I'm not sure I like the move between by putting up Michael, Terrence, and Monty, Terrence, and Joseph. The rationale behind it all is that they plan to backdoor Daniel. You know how I feel about backdoors at this point. A lot of times the pawn has gone home. So this season, I wouldn't necessarily use that strategy, i.e. Pooch, but Nicole. But hey, what do I know? Like I said, who knows? But let me know if you thought that was a good nomination. For me, it was not. And I'm curious to see how other people viewed that move by Michael. But I think for Michael was great. Okay. For the viewer, for me, not so great. But for Michael, great. Why? Because it's a lot of different angles here. First off, if the nominations stay the same, you can go for Terrence. If you actually want to take a shot, you can go for Monty. If the nominations change, you can put up Daniel. So it has a lot of elements that make this move the perfect move by Michael. Michael is insane. He's playing an insane game. Yeah. And Now, I'm going to stabilize this connection. I'm going to come back and I'm going to look forward to Wednesday's episode to see what kind of moves Michael have or Michael has to make and what I think will actually happen. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you again in just a moment.